Have you ever had one of those moments where you're looking at something, maybe you're watching a movie, or maybe you are going on a drive, or maybe you hear a song, and there's something in that song, something in that movie, something that you're looking at that just takes you immediately back to a memory, to a place, to a moment that is kind of like recorded in your brain, but unless it's kind of triggered, you don't really think about it. Sometimes that's like a very positive experience when you remember something beautiful and nice, and sometimes it's a very painful experience when it triggers bad memories and wounds of the past that you kind of try to bury down there so that you would never think about it. But subconsciously it's still there, so all that it needs is a trigger, a moment, a scene, a song, a sound, and all of a sudden you're back there. You're back there at that painful or that beautiful place, whatever the memory might be. And if you have done that, and if you have experienced that, do you think it's possible for us to be rewired out of that? Do you think it's possible for our brains to be reconditioned to a new set of memories? Well, I think it's possible, and I think there might be some research that supports that if you go online and look at reconditioning on your brain. But I think it's possible because Jesus did it. Jesus took a painful memory and reconditioned it so it could be a complete brand new one. As we've been going through this conversation with Jesus, we've seen Jesus have conversations that rewire worldviews, rewire wounds, and heal them. And today, as we're coming to a close, we're going to see the last conversation Jesus has in the book of John. And what we're going to see him do is recondition someone's mind. So we're going to read John chapter 21, and we're going to read from verse 15. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said to him. "You know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." He said to him, "Take care of my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him for a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Amen, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go." Now this he said to indicate by what kind of death Peter was going to glorify God. And after this, Jesus said to him, "Follow me." I don't know what you're thinking about this conversation. I don't know what goes through your mind. Maybe you think this is pretty weird. Why would Jesus ask Peter if he loves him, and why so many times, and what's the whole deal about fending or feeding or caring for the sheep, or even that last sentence about how Peter is gonna die? There's a lot of questions that you might have, and there's a lot of questions that I have. Well, why would Jesus do this? But what I think is super valuable for us to realize is a little bit of the details that John gives us in this conversation. Detail number one, he says they had finished eating breakfast. So this is probably early in the morning as Jesus and Peter are having this conversation. And then another detail that he gives us is that there's 3 questions that are asked. And he emphasizes by saying that Peter was grieved because Jesus asked him for a third time. Why are these details important? Because these details parallel exactly another story. Another story you might already know of. A story that you might already be thinking about. A story of a man who 3 times said something about Jesus. Who 3 times when he was asked, "Hey, aren't you one of his disciples?" He said, "No, it's not me." Who 3 times, and on the third time that he was asked if he follows this man named Jesus, he starts cussing and saying, "No, I'm not his follower, don't you understand it?" And deny him completely. Who 3 times rejects Jesus to preserve his own life. And I don't know if you remember the timing of that conversation, but the timing is early in the morning, because after the third time Peter denies Jesus, he hears the rooster crow. And I wonder, every time Peter hears this rooster, it's not like he heard it that one time and that's it. I mean, they didn't have alarm clocks back then. The only alarm that they had was the roosters in the morning. So I wonder what Peter thought every morning after that moment when he heard a rooster. I wonder if it was a pleasant memory. I wonder if he tried to bury down there deep within his soul and his heart the fact that he denied the man that the night before said he would die for. I wonder if after 3 years of following this man and trying to follow him to the best of his ability, and after all the experiences he had, every time he hears a rooster crow, he's in pain because he realizes and he remembers that, oh my word, I walked on water, yet I still denied him. Oh my word, I told him and I followed him. I confessed him as the Messiah, but when the moment came for me to own up to that confession, I rejected him and abandoned him. I wonder if Peter had in the back of his mind, subconsciously, this pain. And that every time the rooster crows, he feels it again. He can see the face. If you read the Gospel of Luke, it says that after the third time Peter denied Jesus, Jesus looked at him straight in the eyes. And at that moment, Peter remembered because he heard the rooster. I wonder if every time he heard a rooster from then on, Peter could see those eyes. Peter could picture that scene. Peter could smell and feel all of the feelings that he felt that night. And if he did, I don't think it's a coincidence that Jesus talks to him 3 times in the morning. I can almost picture the scene like this. Jesus and Peter are walking on the beach after they have their breakfast. And the rooster crows there in the back, and Jesus asks, "Do you love me?" And Peter kind of unaware, he kind of heard the rooster, but then the question is a little bit shocking, and he says yes, and then the question again, and then the question a third time, and maybe Peter starts to grab hold of what's going on here, and he feels hurt because he's thinking what's going on here? Does he still think I would reject him? Is that why he's asking me so many times? And then he says, "You know everything. You know that I love you." And maybe, just maybe at that moment, the rooster crows one more time. Like the 2 times he heard it before. And then Jesus tells him, "Follow me." Reconditioning his brain. Rewiring his experience from a painful wound that he had because he denied Jesus to the moment of his reinstitution, the moment of him being again fully devoted to Jesus, the moment of his calling one more time. Because Jesus called him after Peter has this great catch of fish, and he tells him, "Okay, follow me." And Peter says, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll do whatever you say." And he follows him. And maybe he had 3 years of great memories and great times, but that one incident right at the end of his journey kind of turns all of those moments to sour. Because he knows that he denied him. So he needs another start. A fresh beginning, a moment where his brain will be reconditioned to a completely new way of memories. A memory not of betrayal and denial, but a moment of affirmation and following. A moment where he says, "I love you, I will follow you." And maybe, just maybe, he heard the rooster the next morning in a different light. Maybe, just maybe, his brain, instead of having the denial and the eyes of pain and betrayal, He has the eyes of love, of care for my sheep. The eyes of follow me. And maybe that's what he remembers from now on, every time the rooster crows. So what about you and me? Do you and I have conversations with Jesus, encounters with him? We encounter him in the word, we encounter him when we worship, we encounter him in creation, we encounter him with people, and we have these plagued memories in the past of our heads, in the back of our heads that prevent us from that. What if you and I would give Jesus a chance of unlocking those things, of unburying those things deep buried within, and we allow him to recondition us, to rewire us, to put new settings, new memories, new experiences in our heads that look so similar to what we went through before, but are so completely different. I know it sounds crazy, and I know that you might think that I'm insane, but I promise you, I've seen Jesus do this. Not just in his word. I've seen men who are deeply wounded, who uncover this deep wound of their past, and who go back to that moment, and who find Jesus in that moment and are completely reconditioned and rewired. I've seen brothers and sisters of mine open up to the possibility that their pain and their past no longer defines them, but that Jesus can give them a completely new identity. And I've seen the healing happen right in front of my eyes. And if you need healing, if there's past and pain, and there's things that your heart and your mind are so plagued by, let me invite you. Give Jesus a chance. Have a conversation with him and let him rewire you out of all of that. Let him give you a different moment, a different experience, so that you know for sure and for certain that he is your new identity. So when he asks you, follow me, there will be nothing that would hold you back. And when that trigger comes back, it will trigger healing. It will trigger Jesus. It will trigger following him, not pain or horrible things in the past. Let him give you a new moment, a new experience. But in order for this to happen, we will have to be open enough to uncover it. Peter was grieved. I get it. There's things I'm ashamed of that I wish I hadn't done. But man, Jesus' grace reconditioned me. And I'm not defined by those things. I'm not defined by the sin or the past or the mistakes. I'm defined by his love. I'm defined by his wound. And that's the wound that I carry. That's the rewiring that I believe in. That's the moment that will define me forever. When he said to me, your sins are forgiven. Follow me. So will you? Will you follow him?